say here again, I'm in Kansas, United States of America. Now, the Midwest is considered cattle country, and I got an opportunity to meet with a beef cattle farmer called Paul. Paul has agreed to take us on a tour of his farm so that we get the experience of beef cattle farming in America. I headed right into a snowstorm here in the Midwest, and it's going to be the perfect opportunity to show you how extreme seasons can be here in America and how farmers cope with this situation. So buckle up and let's dive into this video.
This is corn silage. It's ground up corn. The whole plant.
Wow, the whole plant plus the corn.
That's right. And it ensiles and ferments. And then it's ready to feed.
How long has it been sitting here?
Since August.
Wow.
We didn't start feeding it until the 1st of January.
So what's the importance of keeping this silage here?
It's feed. It's what we use to feed cattle. It's protein. But the ensiling process helps them digest it better. Come here once. Inside there?
What's
Come here.
in there?
Look inside there.
Oh.
That's what mixes and grinds it. That big drum in there,
Yeah.
it has knives on it. You can put a hay bale in there and it completely grinds it all apart.
Wow, those are...
And it also mixes it.
Wow.
This is rolled corn. Yeah, that's what makes steers fat. It's the starch that they need and the protein. So I'm gonna put 1,000 pounds of that into that mixer, but he has to turn the scale so I can see it. We have about 5 varieties of hay that we feed. One's more of a grass hay. One's more of a forage sorghum. One's alfalfa. And then there's corn stalks, which is just leftover stuff from the summer we use for filler, just for bulk to make it go further. And then we have straw, and we've got, there's all kinds of stuff. But alfalfa and sedan and grass hay are the 3 main things that we use. That's how the feed looks. It has hay and silage and corn in it.
Hay, silage, and corn. That's good feed.
Yeah. Smells good.
Amazing. It smells amazing. And all this organically planted by you, right?
That's right, yeah.
Amazing. What inspired your journey into cattle rearing, beef cattle rearing?
You mean in raising cattle?
Yeah, in raising cattle.
What inspired it?
Yeah.
Well, when you grow up on a farm, you've always been with cattle, it's kind of hard to quit. Where there's cattle, there's always a supply of meat. And I just like that. I like working with them. That's what I like to do.
And your dad grew up Amish.
My dad did, yep.
Yeah. What would you have to say? Would the Amish part of your growing up inform or influence?
Most certainly. Amish are heavily in agriculture. Used to be. Not near as much, just because it costs so much, and so it's a lot easier to do construction work. Less commitment, less money invested, and you can make a living. So, but in the old days, in the turn of the century, in the early 1900s, when most people were 90% of what was out here was agriculture.
Now, this is the Midwest.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean, except in the big cities. Everybody was involved in farming. If they weren't involved in farming, they had a cow. A lot of people had a cow in their their little barn behind the house, and they had milk and they had chickens, even if they lived in town. What did your dad do?
My dad was a policeman.
A policeman. So why aren't you in policing?
Because I don't like it.
You didn't like it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and that's, a lot of children don't do what their parents do. But there is still that culture in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
That's there.
But then, being a policeman would certainly be, you'd be a civil servant to the state, okay?
That's right.
But then it's very different to what your father did and what you're doing right now, because right now you get to employ yourself, you get to teach your kids skills that they don't have to be employed by somebody else, but could actually use those skills to benefit their community.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's the concept that has flown from your Amish father all the way down to what you're doing.
That's right. Our culture was self-sustaining. Agriculture, if you had cattle, if you had land, you had food, and you had a way of providing and producing food.
Yeah.
You know, if the weather cooperated with it and it rained, and you know that happened, but that's the way agriculture was. That's where. So I tell people in the Midwest, if a farmer doesn't make money, nobody makes money, because about 75% of the flow, the chain of money, comes from agriculture. Because the land is producing what the farmer has planted.
Exactly.
The farmer gets it and sells it, and that's where money exchange happens.
Exactly.
You can't exchange money for nothing. And we're planting seeds, taking risks, raising feed and food, feed for cattle and food for people.
Yeah.
And in exchange, we get money for that, but we also have it, and that's what's important. Too many people are strictly doing it for money. They don't really experience the end result. They raise grain to sell to the elevator, and the elevator sells it to somebody, either overseas or in market and for in exchange they get cash for it. And then they can buy food that has been produced, and they buy it back. Which to me seems a little bit of a bad scenario, because then if that source all of a sudden goes away, you have a problem.
How much land do you have, and how many cattle are you keeping?
Well, we crop farm about 1,000 acres, and we lease about grassland between 3,000 and 4,000.
Wow, that's a lot of land.
And we run about 400 mama cows. So at any given time, we feed, like right now we're feeding, you know, if you wanted to count all the small cattle and the big cattle, we're feeding probably 1,000 head.
1,000 cattle. That's impressive.
Let me start this tractor.
I mean, just the other day it was minus 22 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
Okay, that should be way, and that number should be higher when you do Fahrenheit. Okay, so how do you manage raising cattle here in the Midwest when it gets so cold?
You have to feed. If you have to feed them good stuff.
Feed is the answer?
Feed and shelter. They have to get out of the wind. The wind chill is what kills cattle. And they have to have good water. If they don't have water, and they don't have shelter to get out of the wind, and they don't have good feed, there's that's the important thing.
But then, are these cattle adapted to this kind of
sure, they have thick hair. Sure. Yeah, the baby calves are born with thick hair. The cattle have thick hair. They get winter coats. But it's still hard on them. Any temperature under 20 degrees is hard on them. It just takes more fuel, takes more water, takes more feed. And if you don't have that, then they start losing body fat. And then you end up with thin cattle in the spring who don't reproduce, and they don't produce good calves. So the important thing is to get them through the winter and make so that they're healthy and still in good condition.
But definitely winter is the hardest time.
Oh, it is, yeah. And some winters in Kansas, it's not cold, and some winters it's like this, where it's just bitterly cold. You know, in 2011, we had a severe drought, and That January, we hardly had a winter that winter.
Yeah.
I remember January, several days was 80 degrees. You know, it would get down and freeze, but it wasn't like this. This is a more of what the winters were 50 to 60 years ago. The 70s and 80s they had a lot of winters like this.
Those are water fountains?
Yes.
So
they're automatic. There's a float.
Uh-huh.
There's a water pipe comes up the middle.
Yeah.
And there's a float in there, and it keeps them so full. And as the cattle drink, it fills it, keeps it full.
So right now you have to check and
I have to make sure it isn't froze. There's a heat tube coming up from the ground that's 5 foot deep, and it keeps it warm.
Yeah.
But if they don't drink it, it freezes, then it doesn't work.
What breed of cattle do you keep here?
We have several varieties of Angus. We have some Hereford cross. We have some Charolais cross. But that's about the majority of it. Gelbvieh, there's a strain of Gelbvieh in it. But this side over here is replacement heifers. These will be cows that will have babies next year. And over here is the steers that are finishing for the butcher shop.
Tell me, what are steers?
Steers are castrated male cattle. And they gain better, they have a better feed conversion, and they do better marbling in the meat.
What is marbling?
Marbling is fat inside the muscle. And that's what makes meat tender and tasty.
Wow.
So we're constantly feeding, making sure they're comfortable, and cattle that are calm, not wild, make a big difference on tenderness too. If you have a wild animal, they're tough.
Interesting. So the red one is a red Angus.
That's right, yep.
And the black one is a black Angus.
That's what they are, but these are all crossbred cattle. I like crossbred cattle because they're more hardy, they're healthier, and they grow better.
Wow.
And so you want something that stays healthy, something that gains good, and you want them having a good disposition.
So you've mentioned you've got heifers on the other side. How do you breed them yourself?
We do AI. So I have 18 or 20 bulls that I buy, and they're worth $5,000 to $6,000 a piece. But I can buy semen straws for about $25 from bulls that are worth $50,000 or $60,000. And so we use that semen to fertilize those heifers, and then we turn a cleanup bull in, and it just makes the herd improve faster because you're using better genetics, and it just works that way. I do it with heifers, I don't do it with cows.
You said one bull is worth $5,000.
Oh, some of those bulls, 50. Some of those bulls that are used for selling semen off of, I saw one sell here last year for almost $1 million.
A bull?
A bull.
Wow.
They take it in, he's never out. He's in a building, they harvest semen, they put a little straws, and they use that. He could fertilize 50 to 100,000 animals.
Oh my.
Whereas he would never be able to do that otherwise, naturally. And then they sell those for so much a straw, which it's just a little, the size of it, it's not much. It's an 8 cc. And we did that on February the 8th.
So an 8 cc worth of semen would fertilize a cow.
That's right.
Impressive. So what about these steers? How much would you sell a normal conventional steer for meat? A full one?
Once it's full, once it's done, they're worth about $3,500 to $4,000 an animal.
That's a lot of money.
And then that's processed, in that $3,500 to $4,000. On the hoof, they're worth, $2,500 to $3,000.
Impressive. Tell me something about your management, Paul. How many people do you employ?
I don't employ anybody.
do you think it's really important that your family is involved in raising cattle?
Sure.
Why?
Most certainly. It puts something in them that wants to do that down the road if they can. You know, and I'm not going to hold them to it if they don't. Especially the girls, you know, they may go off and do nursing, or they may go off and do teaching, or they'll get married and have children of their own. And, you know, I imagine someday either Russell or one of the boys, or then a married, you know, my daughter or somebody would come back and want to help. And in that transition, they could go on with it, because I'm going to get old. And generations end and start. And the only way you can pass on a farm is by helping them understand it and wanting them to enjoy doing it. And the love of taking care of cattle and farming is something that you can't just wake up one day and want to do.
So this is the field that has the lactating cows, right?
This is one of the fields that has got cattle in it that are calving right now. Yes.
Those are I'm seeing a lot of calves out there. So what happens when you're not around? I mean, in terms of their security, predators, people stealing. Do you have people stealing?
No, we don't. I've never had cattle stolen.
Yeah, what about predators?
There's coyotes around here, but I shoot them every chance I get. I shoot on an average probably 15 to 20 every winter.
Wow.
They keep coming back, but they hardly ever give me trouble. They like dead animals, but they hardly ever give trouble with live cattle.
Here's one cow. What do you think he's doing here?
That's the one that I'm.
She's calm?
Well, she has it. I brought a calf back that was out here in the cold. Or there's a calf out here somewhere. I don't know where she's at. But it was cold last night. So I took the calf in, and sometimes when you bring it back several hours later, they think that it's not their calf, and so you have to help them understand that it is their calf.
So what is it that makes it so expensive for small farmers to start and sustain themselves in beef farming here in America?
Well, the cost of land, the cost of infrastructure, fences, cattle. Cattle are expensive right now, really expensive. More expensive than I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it's because there's a shortage. We've been through, the Midwest has been through a serious drought, lots of wildfires. Cattle numbers are down. With cattle numbers down, the meat supply is shorter. So that drives the demand up, drives the price up. So if you were starting in now, if you would buy a heifer, for instance, that's ready to have a calf or has a calf on it, you would probably pay between $3,500 and $4,000 for that one cow and calf, a baby calf. Okay, so, you know, in the first year, it costs about $600 to own a cow for the year. That's a small number. I mean, it can go up from there, but that's kind of where I figure it costs. And the calf, if you wean it and take good care of it, you could probably get in today's market $2,000 for the calf. Well, so all of a sudden, it takes 2 or 3 years to pay off this cow, and this cow could, you know, 1 year not have a calf, or it could lose a calf, or a lot of things can happen. So it takes about 4 years to pay for a cow if you went and bought it before you actually have, you know, a good return on it. So there's a lot of risk in it. A lot of people want to invest money and next year have a return. Well, with cattle, it doesn't always work that way. I'm gonna take you home to a better spot, okay?
So what happened to the calf?
The calf was born last night in the bitter, bitter cold. And I had to take it in to warm it up. And the cow got confused on whose baby it was, and she wanted to claim another cow's calf, and so she doesn't think this is hers. So she will end up with no calf this year.
So you have to take care of this calf by yourself?
Well, there's another cow over in the other group that had a great big calf, and it didn't make it.
Yeah.
And I may adopt this one on to that cow. She's actually a good cow.
So how are you gonna make the new mother accept the new cow
We'll see.
for adoption?
Oh, you skin the strip off the back of the dead calf and you tie it onto this one. Then it smells like her calf.
Wow, that is brilliant.
Well, it's
They say you can't fool a cow. They're really good at smelling their own.
So here's the dead calf. Here's its mother.
So you're gonna attach a piece of it to the new cow.
That's right.
He's definitely smelling him. Let's see if the cow's gonna get to suckle.
And the cow isn't knocking it over, so that should work.
Okay. So can a farmer sustain themselves just raising cattle?
If you didn't have debt, you could,
Uh-huh.
but it's pretty hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you have debt, if you borrow money,
Yeah.
you're going to have to pay it back, and there's interest with that, and there's risk with that.
Uh-huh.
You don't always get about in a good year, you have a 95% calf crop.
Uh-huh.
So out of 100 cows, you'll end up with 95 calves. That's a good year.
I see.
And then you have 5 cows that don't have calves. So it's just it's one of those, it's part of that whole scenario.
Tell us how you've managed to maneuver around that and owning your own butcher shop and selling your own meat.
Well, it's a process. So when we got married, we had very little money. We rented a trailer. We lived in there for 10 years, 7 years.
Yeah.
The first 3-4 children were born there. We bought a piece of land way west that was, back then, the land was $400 and some an acre. It was pretty poor land, and we started with some cattle that I bought.
Yeah.
Back then, a calf, just for a comparison, a calf then, you figured it at between $500 and $600 for a calf at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Now it's $2,000. So there's the difference in price, and there was a lot of, and it was hard. So I worked at a feed mill for 5 years. I drove a milk truck for 1.5 years.
Yeah.
When I started a mechanic shop, I had been doing mechanic work evenings and weekends to try to make it work. And then I started up a mechanic shop, and that was kind of a jump in the dark, because how do you know it's going to work?
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of money, and a lot of after I started the mechanic shop, it went well. I ran that for let me think, 15 years, I think, is when how long I had a mechanic shop. And then we got, the cattle kept coming and we kept getting bigger, and the children kept getting older and wanted to help. And so, that's kind of how it works. And the main thing is the fact that if you start into it, I'm hoping that Russell or one of the children or somebody can go on with it and doesn't have to spend so much time making, having to work. It's going to be hard because there's a lot to buy, and it's a lot to take over. But you know, I don't know. It's just it's very difficult to just start. You know what it takes. What the investment I have here is millions of dollars.
Wow.
And so,
This part of the video contains scenes of animal butchering, strictly for intent of educational purposes and food preparation. This is strictly not to glorify animal cruelty, mistreatment, or suffering.
finally, in 21, just in the middle of COVID, you couldn't get beef in anywhere. The lockers were backed up a year and a half. We decided, well, this is maybe a good opportunity to start a butcher shop. I had the inspectors come in from Topeka, and they said, looks good, go for it. So we spent 6 months getting it all prepared, ready, and we started May 1st of 21, I'm pretty sure was the year we started. And when we started, we were a year behind. We had a year's worth of work when we started. And so, and it's basically, it's down to where, but we have 50 of our own scheduled, and we kill 130 steers every year. So we're almost at half. And so I really don't need that much more custom work to make it work. So 60, 70 animals, custom work above and beyond our own is all it takes. And I'm hoping with time that all we do is our own animals.
Farmers are disappearing in America. Okay? Why are you still here? How have you been able to survive and grow at the same time?
Because a lot of farmers specifically do one thing, and a farmer almost has to do various things. Grain farmers, they want to be busy 6 months out of the year, and then 6 months go to Florida. And I am, you know, and my wife complains that I'm always busy, but I am busy year round with all the different things I'm doing, and it's the only way you'll ever get ahead farming. You have to, and another thing is, what's really helped in the last couple years now is the fact that we sell meat to the last people.
So you sell directly to the people?
I sell directly to the people eating the meat.
No middleman?
No middleman.
And that saves you a lot of money. So at the end of the day...
Well, it makes me a lot of money.
Nice.
It makes so that my income is much better. And another thing that was a problem was some of the butcher shops didn't guarantee the meat the animals that I took in. They didn't guarantee that those animals would get to the customer that I had sold them to. They process them and they get so much weight, and that's it. And that really bothered me. I didn't like that because, you know, some people were getting an old cow versus a good fed steer. So that doesn't work either. This way, we butcher a half a steer. It has your name on it. It gets froze, and you get that, whatever you brought in. There's no questions asked.
So what is this part that you've cut now?
This is the front leg. This is what they call an arm.
Then what are the pieces? I understand in America you have different pieces have different names, like a ribeye, a sirloin, that.
Yeah, there's ribeyes. There's T-bones. Here's a ribeye. That's for that person.
Which part of the animal would that come from?
That's right up here. So from this bone right here to right here is ribeye. From this bone to right here is T-bone. And it has the fillet on the inside and the casey strip on the outside if you debone it. So there's various words. I mean, yeah. However you process it has different words, and every butcher shop has a little bit of a different twist on how they do stuff and how they call it. And then there's ribs, there's brisket. The brisket is up in the front. The flank steaks are right in here. And then the back is where there's sirloin from here back. And then there's roasts in there that you can take out if people want it. There is the rump, sirloin tip, and there's a Pike's Peak roast in here.
Now walk us through the process. You told me it's an informed process once you get the steers off the field to the butcher shop. Walk us through the process. You have to let them hang for a number of
That's
days.
right.
And
They're
for what
hung. They're
reason?
hung for 10 days.
For 10 days.
10 days. Yes.
For what reason?
For aging purposes and for tenderness.
Ah.
A beef animal needs to rest hanging to relax the muscle.
Okay.
And after 5 days, it starts to soften. The muscle relaxes completely after 5 days. But the longer you hang it, the shelf life of the fat goes down because it tends to be a little bit more rancid.
Yeah.
So once you get to 14 to 21 days of hanging or longer, your hamburger shelf life deteriorates fast. That's why we process at 10. There tends to be a better shelf life.
Okay. Okay.
Some people like that taste of aged meat, and some people don't.
Don't like that.
We actually have processed stuff that we kill on Monday, and we process it that Thursday because the people do not like that taste whatsoever. But I tend to think that the 10-day mark, you don't have any kind of an age taste to it.
What are some of the processes that you have to go through to open your own butcher shop?
They are Topeka, the state of Kansas, is for anything to help the food chain. Ever since COVID, people realized how short supplied the food chain is in America.
Yeah.
Because of the big companies who had control over everything.
The corporations,
right? Like Tyson and all those bigger companies that own huge process. There's a plant in Holcomb, Kansas. They process 5,000 head a day. And but they have control over all that meat.
Yeah.
And it mostly whoever pays the most gets it. So if Japan or China pays enough for it, that's who gets it.
So you'd have a situation where the corporation is actually exporting a lot of meat outside the country.
That's right. That meat hardly ever stays in the U.S. Because of the quality. It's what's served in McDonald's and those kind of places are whole animals. I
want to take this opportunity to thank you for watching, to thank Paul and his family for this amazing experience. If you've watched up until this point and you like it, consider subscribing, give me a thumbs up, and see you in the next one. Bye.